Hello, folks. Good evening. Hope you're all well. Just some of you, some familiar names on the list, so nice to see you all again. Just quickly, those who don't know me, just a brief resume about myself. Been working in the industry for over 25 years now, and done this full time ever since. Gained my ML in the 90s, and I suppose like around the Mountain Leader syllabus, I've been working on them since 2001. And probably over that time frame delivered and been part of over 300 ML courses. But I think the most important thing, as well as having a good understanding of the syllabus, is also that I still work as a mountain leader. So, you know, I run my own business. I'm in the mountains on a weekly basis, maybe not so much now, but normally. You know, whether it's climbing, teaching, mountaineering, in North Wales predominantly, but in other parts of the UK and overseas as well. I'm also the Mountain Training Association North Wales reps as well, so I'll do quite a bit for the association here in North Wales. And I guess this topic has come from previous discussions with folk. I get a lot of comms with folk, calls and emails and stuff about questions, and so this seems to be one of the common things that people have a lot of questions about. So as usual, if you have any questions, just drop them into the comments box. I've got them here on the right, so I will probably I might deal with them as they come up, or I'll probably just leave it to the end and then just whiz through. I've got a nice set of questions. You've given me some meaty questions tonight, as usual, so let's crack on. So I thought we'll just quickly have a look at the Mountain Leader Handbook. So, and in there, it has navigation is a fundamental skill in mountain walking. The leaders must be confident with their route, no matter how limited the visibility. I think the actual syllabus criteria points that we have to sort of like look at on training and on assessment talks about methods for navigating cross country in poor vis and or darkness. And I guess like when we're working, and maybe I'll flip around a little bit tonight about between the syllabus and also when we're working, but certainly when we're working, it's probably mostly going to be during the day, you know, poor visibility, cloud comes in, or we ascend into the cloud. And so we found ourselves in limited vis. Maybe though, this time of year, you know, the day might be a little bit longer than you anticipate, and or perhaps a bit slower, and then you descend into darkness. Or maybe the third option of why we might be night navving, for example, would be teaching. So certainly a good way of teaching poor visibility navigation is to do it during the evening. You know, you can't guarantee poor weather, so it's good to sort of like have these sort of things penciled in this time of year. So let's just crack on with some questions, because I think that's the meaty bit. So Alan, good to see you. Good questions. Alan, I'll just quickly paraphrase the questions. Do you have a max limit for distance, pacing and or timing at night, or poor visibility before you confirm your location? So I'm going to start with the word confidence to start with. So whatever the situation, you need to have confidence in the technique that you're going to choose and how to apply it. And there's no shortcuts to getting this. It's really born from experiences about having a go, trying different techniques, different terrain, and reflecting on the mistakes that you make, and so on. And this is how you gain the knowledge to become confident in all the areas of navigation, and specifically in poor visibility. So there's this great C.S. Lewis quote that I really like, and it talks about this idea of experience. And, you know, like I say, you can't shortcut this. You have to kind of go out and you have to have a go. You are going to make mistakes, and that's kind of part of the process. I guess coming back to the question, I'm sort of going around a circuit here. Coming back to the question of, do I have a max limit for distance, pacing and or timing before I confirm? And no, the answer was really no. It's really depend on the context of what I'm trying to achieve. So, for example, I might travel like 100 meters and then come across a really distinct linear feature, and it would be sensible then just to confirm against that feature. But on the flip side, I may travel a greater distance, and there may not be anything distinct within that area. And so perhaps instead of a distance traveled as a rule, maybe think about not going past something distinct without confirming. So, you know, you might have something on the map that you can identify between your objective, and you think that would be a good feature that I can use on my way to tick off, like a tick off feature. Or you might not have interpreted the map, and you might have missed something, and you come across something on the ground physically You know, linear features like streams and boundaries that you physically have to cross are really good tick features to like check off against. So rather than maybe distance, you know, having a hard rule against distance, I tend to work against when I come across distinctive features. And so coming back to that experience thing, basically, the more time you put into this, in being in poor, more experience you have in poor visibility, then you'll automatically know what to choose what is right. So you might choose timing, you might choose pacing, and so on. Moving on quickly, Edith, haven't heard from you, Edith, for a while, but good to see you or hear from you. Good couple of questions from you. If you could only give experienced night navigators 2 tips, what would they be? Yeah, it's an interesting one, that. The first one, again, I'm going to use this double word quite a bit tonight. The first one is practice. So if we would take another vital skill, so for those of you who go winter walking on a regular basis, then every winter I would then think about practicing my ice axle rest. Okay, it's a key skill that I need to like revisit and confirm and refresh every season we go back into winter. And it's no different to this. So if you haven't been out in poor visibility for a while, or you haven't been out in darkness for a while, then you need to sort of carry on that practice. And I sort of talk about, quite a few of you may have heard me use the analogy of like riding a bike. It's like riding a bike. I may not have been on a bike for 10 years, but I'll never forget how to ride it. But on that first day I get back on it, I won't be putting wheelies. And it's the same thing around poor visibility navigation. You won't forget the techniques, you won't forget the application, but you won't necessarily have the same level of confidence as you may have done when you were being out on it quite a bit. So practice, and something you could do there, you know, would be, you know, if you want to go out and practice it, maybe it's, I don't know, it's maybe this time of year and you're having a nice quality mountain day out, but you've left a little bit later deliberately, you're coming down into dusk, and you just sort of last hour of the day just practicing and refining those skills. But maybe if you're doing it, maybe try to, you know, be in new areas that you're not aware of. So, you know, you're still having to revisit the skill set. I think the second tip I'd probably offer would be that techniques don't really change. So the actual techniques of poor viz don't necessarily change as such. You know, they're pretty much, you know, if you pick up any of the old books, they've been around for a long time. But things that do change is kit. So torches, for example, I mean, I think they've come a long way since the old Petzl Zoom. I'm sure some of you will remember those. Always 25 quid, and batteries, big chunky batteries that lasted for 10 minutes, and then you could change over the halogen bulb. You know, things have moved on massively, and there's frequent like technological gains in the area. So it's worth doing some research and trying out new kits sometimes. You know, maybe like borrow, see what your friends have got, or other colleagues have got, your peers have got, and having a go and seeing how good they are and how long the battery lasts and so on. So I think like for those who want to be out in the poor viz or certainly at night now, for example, on a regular basis, then definitely practice is the key thing, and also, you know, think about your technique, think about your kit. Another one from Edith. What would you consider the most crucial elements of night navigation that people still get wrong even after practicing for a long time? Yeah, so there's a few things I'm going to elaborate further down the sort of questions, but it's surprising how maths is a frequent issue. Yeah, I've had a number of folk, even folk who teach maths, you know, A-level and GCSE maths, and doing mental arithmetic in the middle of the night has been fairly challenging. So the idea of measuring from the map, converting it to a time or distance, has posed a number of problems. And so if you think about the mountain leader assessment, you know, night nav is on the first day of the expedition. So we've had a few days on the hill, and it can be quite a long day. And so doing mental arithmetic at 1 o'clock in the morning is going to be challenging for anyone. And so, you know, my suggestion would be use pacing cards. You know, you've got to have them. It's pretty simple. Put whatever info you want on them. Don't just necessarily pick them up from myself or Mountain Training themselves or anywhere else. You know, you can kind of construct your own, put whatever info you feel that you need on them. And over time, you will get familiar with mistakes, with the numbers. But yeah, by not having a pacing card, certainly at that sort of time, you are increasing the chances of having a mistake. And think of it long term. You cannot make those sort of mistakes around numbers when you're actually working. So if you're trying to put a distance against your measurement, and you have a group who are looking at you in poor viz, you cannot afford to make those sort of mistakes. So pacing cards are brilliant. I still carry one. I know the numbers off my heart, but who knows, sometimes I might be tired, I might have a little small brain fart, and I could just reach for my pacing card and just convert everything. Brilliant. Moving on to Ian. So this is a really common question, this one. Do you have any sneaky tips for reading the minute detail of a map in the dark in heavy rain while wearing glasses? Yeah, really common, and see this a lot. So I've got good eyesight. So basically these thoughts are just things I've seen or I've discussed with folk, and they seem to sort of work. I guess the sort of the glasses versus contact lenses is the sort of the first point of call. And that's kind of down as an individual basis. A good wide hood, on your waterproof jacket, or like a baseball cap, so like this sort of cocoon around your face protecting. There's quite a few lightweight waterproof jackets out which don't have a good hood. The hood's quite wide and it's not stiff enough, so supplementing it perhaps with a baseball cap and a real tight narrow peak seems to be one of the options. Think about your maps. So we have traditionally, I suppose, been brought up and taught maybe the first time on a OS 1-25. We may have moved on to other maps, but however, if you put poor lighting and rain and wind and noise, seeing the detail on a map is really hard at times. So use mapping software and blow things up. I use this a lot now, and like I say, I have good eyesight, but I use this on a regular basis from a working point of view. So on the map on the left here, as you look at the screen, is a 1-25 blown up to a 1 to 10,000 scale. The map in the middle is a 1 to 50 blown up to a 1 to 25, and the map on the right is a 1 to 50 blown up to a 1 to 10,000 scale. Yep. You just need to check some of the detail, when you print it off, that the scale is correct, the measurements are correct, but straight away, I've made my life a lot easier to see in poor light and poor viz and rain and wind and so on. And so there's always the argument, well, not the argument to say, there was always a discussion, I suppose, of like, if I walk off the map, etc. I'm not that bad a navigator. So I guess like I sort of stay in similar areas anyway, and I know the areas relatively well, but I can have a number of these in my bag, and I would always have like the map at the bottom. I'll come back to in a moment, but I have a map at the bottom, for example, spare in my rucksack as well. This is the one at the bottom is a commercial map, and there's a few products like this, I believe. Yellow Walk maps are really useful. They're 1 to 16. It's just a normal OS scale. Normal OS map, 1 to 25, blown up to 1 to 16,000. Brilliant again, absolutely brilliant. And with all of these, again, you can do all of the maths at home. You should not be like calculating the differences of your romas and your millimeters out in the mountains. All this can be recalculated and put onto your pacing cards. What else do we have? Right, magnifying glasses. Yeah, so we've got magnifying on lenses on the compasses. They're all right, but again, they're not particularly brilliant. Seeing some of the detail. So Sherlock Holmes, I've seen this. This has been brilliant. I saw one of these a number of years ago. Someone actually turned up on a night nav on ML assessment with a Sherlock Holmes magnifying glass. That's type of size, and he had it absolutely wide. He had a string. It was all attached to string. Went through his sleeves. Were on the side. He had a compass on the other side, and he had a system that worked really well. It looked quite Inspector Gadget to start with, but it worked for him, and he had it absolutely wide, and it was really impressive to see. But there's other things in the market as well. So this is like a credit card size thing. It's got a little torch on it as well. There's so many different variations on these, but these little gadgets are about £5–10. Amazon, eBay seem to be the popular places to sort of access these. Lots of like variety of them, but yeah, they really show detail up well. Really impressive. And I guess the other thing you could do is think about annotating maps. So yeah, you know, Sharpies work really well. China graph pencils. You can get mechanical China graph pencils now, which is, you know, a new revelation for me. A recent one. You know, China graphs are great, but they tend to break, etc., etc. So a mechanical China graph pencil is the perfect thing I found in pouring rain and high winds, etc. So, but annotating maps, your location, and any other key information you want is a really good way to sort of keep track of where you're going. So from Ian, does everyone misjudge distance in the dark, or is it just me? I think we probably all do actually at some point. Pretty easy. We know we're not perfect. You know, it's easy to make mistakes, especially if we're tired or we're in challenging terrain. Yeah, it's never going to be easy, is it? So here's some thoughts. So how about practicing these techniques in daylight? So why don't you, before you sort of think about distance and darkness, you know, have a good go at practicing distance in daylight. So go to somewhere that's easy, so it's not too complex. So here, hopefully you'll be familiar with this area. It's just above Idwal Cottage and into Llyn-Idwal. It's dead easy terrain. It's not complex, and it's very easy to access. But the beauty of it is that there's lots of really good sort of ML standard type of features that are short, but you can like really work on your accuracy and get your pacing measured to a really good standard. So for me, practice in daylight first would be a good one, and that helps you build that confidence up. And by going to places like here, you know, by building that confidence up, then that would sort of set you up for really well to go into more complex areas later on, you know. And certainly like, you know, if you do this progressively, you could revisit this area at night. So do this during the day, come back, do the same sort of area again at night, same sort of features, maybe attack it from different angles, different directions. So it's a bit more of a challenge, but you do have an awareness of those features, what they are, and they do exist. And then like when you feel that you're like, you know, you're happy and you're building confidence, then you can go into places that are perhaps more complex or areas that are not so familiar to you. You do not have to go, you know, sort of straight into the whirlwinds, which is pretty challenging at the best of times. And just try to like thrash yourself around there for a few hours in pitch black. I mean, it's the easiest place to get lost in seconds. So, and it's, you know, that would definitely unbuild your confidence, I would suggest. So daylight would be a good option. Things that could help with practicing distance though. So, so firstly, I'd probably think about calibrating your pacing. So if you haven't done that already, you need to find something flat around you where you live and just do 100 meters. You know, a running track is like the ideal. So if you can access a running track, and that is 100 meters, then you can just calibrate your paces. It might be worth putting a rucksack on too. You know, your paces might be the same or it might be different. I don't know. If you're a climber, you might have a 50-meter rope and you could do a couple of those. Make sure it's a 50-meter rope and you haven't cut it to 45 or something. But yeah, just calibrate your pacing first. Then other things you could do in areas like we have here in the map, you could think about linear features like boundaries and streams. Look for things on the map that you can measure. So within that linear structure, are there bends or junctions with distances of 50, 100 or 200 meters? And then you can measure them and then you could pace them on the ground. Okay, so for example, nice French junction, and then you can follow that lovely linear feature, and there's some really distinct bends, just as an example, something like that. And you can experiment that with different, on slightly steeper ground as well. You can see that boundary goes through a few contour lines as well. So by having those sort of linear features on sort of like more awkward terrain or slightly an increase in the gradient, then you can see how that affects your stride and pace number. Most likely you'll come up short, so you could start your count from 0. This would give you the additional paces. So for example, 10 paces. So, you know, if you've measured your distance, you pace it out, you come up short. You know, if you are going to go up something, your stride will change. You are then most likely to be short. So in this instance, you could start from 0, carry on counting to your target. So let's call it another 10 paces. And then in the future, when you're in a similar situation, similar sort of gradient, you'll then be like, oh, okay, for 100 meters, I need to apply 10 paces for every 100 meters. You could add this to your pacing card. You know, your pacing card can be, you know, a couple of pacing cards. You could have as much information on there as you want. But this is how you gain this knowledge. A small selection. So my advice to you would be, you know, there's one in the Mountain Leader Handbook. You know, you've probably all been given one at some point, or have access to one, or bought one online. But you know, you can see the one on the left-hand side is just a homemade job, and that's what you need to do. Just take all these cards and put whatever information on as you want on them. Okay. Another option on sort of like the pacing on sort of like awkward terrain, steeper terrain. I've just mentioned about like walking 100 meters and then adding on another 10 paces because of the nature of the terrain. Another option would be your stride. So, you know, top photo shows my normal stride, bottom photograph shows, you know, stride that's changed because of the terrain. So I quite often use this technique, and probably is my favorite option, to be honest. So I recalibrate on every step rather than do 100 meters. So if I know my stride has been significantly changed, then like the bottom photograph, then I might choose not to count, for example, if that makes sense, hopefully. Another option you could do would be think about walking a square. So here, these green arrows, you know, you can choose again, this, like this area here, you could get loads done in this area. This is a brilliant area. And anyone who knows this sort of area just below Clogham and Tarry will know it's quite awkward. You know, it's not particularly pleasant. There's a few boulders, there's quite a few chunky boulders. It's awkward terrain, okay? But within there, I could do like a walk a square. You know, again, I'll probably do this in daylight, and then I might move on to like a nighttime exercise. And what I'm doing is I'm doing like 100 square meters, you know, have a starting point, you know, definitive point. It could be in a daytime, I could just leave my rucksack there, you know, for example, and I pace out 100 meters along a level piece, then I pace 100 meters up, then I pace 100 meters across the slope, 100 meters down the slope. And all the time my stride is adjusting. By doing this a number of times in different scenarios and different types of terrain, I'll quickly get used and comfortable with the idea of like adjusting my stride or adding on additional paces to my 100 meters. And you could do, if you want to get a bit more funky, you can do triangles. You know, this square is based on 90 degrees, and do triangles based on 120 degrees, and you can do hexagons based on 60 degrees. So you can get as funky, as much challenging as you want. You can make it short. You can go 25 meters, 50 meters. You can make it 200 meters. So, you know, you can really build up the skill here and get really accurate. I think around all of that as well, certainly, you know, like, I mentioned about the linear features, I mentioned about the square, for example, you know, having a GPS type of GPS software to just confirm everything will really help. You'll notice that there's like, you know, distance traveled in the top right hand corner of that GPS screen. So, you know, things like that will then help you work out if you are correct. So hopefully, Ian, that's given you just some little thoughts on misjudging distance. But yeah, I think coming back to it, does everyone misjudge distance? Yeah, I'm sure we have, and I'm sure we still do occasionally. So it does happen. Next question was head torch. So head torch or hand torch? Like it. Wow, there's a proper mishmash of torches on the market these days. So for me, both. It's simple as that. So let me explain that. So my head torch is from a nav, so I can nav and I can see where I'm going. And my hand torch, you know, does a multitude of things. So yeah, it helps me in the nav and see where I can go. And the hand torch is actually more powerful than my head torch slightly as well, so I can see great distance at night. But where these two complement each other is twofold. One, first thing being that if you ever, I couldn't find any good photographs of this, so I'll have to explain it. But if you're in darkness and you have cloud, so sort of like the worst thing you would not want to have on your expedition, because the visibility will be really limited, you know, maybe a few meters. But as soon as you put your head torch on, it gets dissipated by the cloud. It's like no different with your car in fog and putting it onto main beam, for example. So you need to put it back onto dip. So if you have a head torch, you will not see a great distance at all. If you're lucky, it's just dissipated. Now with a hand torch, so you could take your head torch off, okay, there's a compromise. But with a hand torch, it allows me to bring my torch beam along the line, low down, along the line of the ground. So literally I bend right down and I sweep my hand torch right along the ground. And you'll quite often sweep right underneath all the cloud, and you'll see like 10, 15, 20 meters, much further than you would with a normal head torch used in its sort of normal situation. The second reason I use quite often will carry a hand torch is it provides another layer of illumination for the group. So you can ask your team that you're working with to have torches. So this time of year, if you're not off the hill, back in the valleys, 4-ish, then your torches will be coming out pretty soon. And then when everyone brings out their torch that they've bought and you've asked them to bring, it may not be like sufficient illumination for you. You just sort of realize, yeah, it's sort of something out of Lidl's and it only lasts 5 minutes. So my hand torch is something that lasts for a long period of time and provides a lot of illumination. So I can quite often, you know, I can actually physically walk nearer or have this particular torch nearer the back of the group and provide illumination for the whole team as well. So yeah, good question. But for me, both are part of my toolkit. Okay. I've already alluded a little bit. It's amazing working through all the technology. I mean, lumens, battery life, and so on. Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy, and they are expensive. They are not cheap to buy. You know, all I can say to you is that, like, ask around. You know, ask myself, ask all your peers that are on here tonight. See when you go out walking, see what your mates got in your their rucksack, and see what they've got, see what their thoughts are. You know, this will start narrowing down perhaps brands and models that you feel like would work for you. And then if you can, obviously try and use one, because, like, you know, there's a lot of things that are on the market are pretty expensive, and they don't really cut the mustard very well in the mountains in that sort of poor viz. So it's worth doing some research on. Brilliant. Hope that answered that one for you, Ian. Brilliant. Let's move on. So I've got lots of notes. You made me write lots of information today, so I've been busy for you. Right, Wayne. Wayne's asked a few questions, so let me just whiz through them. What are the common areas? Sorry, what are the most common errors made during night navigation, and how can they be avoided? So let me see. Okay, so let me just flip through to this one here. So I'm gonna come back to lack of confidence, to be honest. I think is pretty common, and it's not necessarily like you haven't got the ability to do it. It's about the confidence in confirming where you believe you are or not, and then not really sure what to do next. So, and I guess this is just you know, not having spent a great deal of time perhaps in poor visibility and perhaps on your own. One of the things that you know, I would definitely recommend is going out solo walking, you know, at times, because and having a go in poor visibility. You know, if the cloud is down, then having a go, because if you're on your own, it's about making decisions. It's about like using your experience and your knowledge to move around the mountain safely and make key decisions about how you're going to navigate it. If you tend to go out with peers and friends all the time, then there will always perhaps be a tendency to do things by committee and together. And so when it comes to like working and you're on your own with a group, it's quite hard if you haven't had that exposure before, being on your own and making independent decisions. So, and I think this is what sometimes we see, certainly on mountain leader assessments. So I'm just going to use an example here. So just follow me through, for example. So I'm going to travel from A to B. This is on the Carneth Eye. This is traveling between Carneth Davet and heading up north towards Carneth Llewellyn. And I guess if you were doing involved in the Welsh 3000s, for example, you know, you could be doing this during the later part of the day. And probably I would have thought you'd be past this by now, but you'd be heading into dusk, that's for sure, soon after. So I want to go A to B, and then I'm going to ultimately head up to C. So A to B, so I'm gonna, I've got a good catching feature there at B, and then essentially turn left, head north or northeast, and then head up towards Llewellyn. I'm leaving a bearing and I'm measuring my distance that I've travelled as well. So there's B, and there's my distance I'm travelling. I complete my distance and I'm clearly not at B, okay? So I haven't reached my catching point. So my first option, as I mentioned, if you're pacing, for example, across terrain, then, your stride can be changed, and sometimes it can be larger, of course. More often than not, it will be reduced. I've rarely seen anyone sort of go beyond their objective on pacing, so overshoot by pacing, and those who have done have generally miscalculated. They've done the mental arithmetic wrong, so they haven't measured correctly, or they haven't done the calculation correctly. So it's normal to sort of like be short. So the first option you've got would be to carry on. Yep, so carry on your bearing, carry on another distance, so carry on pacing or chiming as you so wish. If you've done everything else correctly, then you will hit your target and you will bump into that brilliant catching feature. Another option from X would be to gain some information. So I could go south or I could go north, and that would give me some information that may help me to make it a decision of what to do next. And clearly, each direction brings a different aspect of slope and a distinct change in gradient. One's shallower and one's much steeper. What I need to avoid doing is this. So from my X, don't hit B. I'm clearly not at B. Now I'm just going to wander. So I kind of been on quite a few mystery tours over the years, and we just sort of wander around the mountain for a bit. And sometimes you might get lucky and you might bump into B. Other times you don't. And now what you have is you have a bit of a problem because you've lost X. You cannot just wander back to wherever X was. Now, what I want to do is just use some simple techniques to gain more information around me, find my location, and then make an informed decision of where I am at. It's just having a simple process. And I think all of these processes that I have always allow me to go back to A. So I can just do a reverse bearing and go back to A. So, something hasn't worked, so perhaps I've missed something, I've miscalculated. So I can go back and have another go, the same strategy or change strategy, but I don't lose my last known point, which is A. As soon as you start wandering, then you do. And I think this is kind of like going back to the question for you, Wayne, what the most common areas during night nav, and I was talked about lack of confidence is around all of this, sort of, I haven't quite made B, not sure what to do next. I'm just going to go for a wander, and then it starts unraveling quite quickly. So it's about having some form of logical process. In terms of going north and south here, if I was to throw this compass up, for example, so traveling between A and B, you can see I was just sort of around 80 degrees, okay? Now when I want to go north and south to sort of like have a quick recce, gain some more information, then I don't need to change the compass housing or the bezel. I just leave it as it is. But what I do is I put my directional travel arrow in the direction that I would like to travel to the top of the map. And then I use the red magnetic needle and get it to point to one of the cardinal points, so northeast, southwest. I could use any number, okay? Of course I could, but northeast, southwest is much easier for me to remember when I'm under pressure. So all I've done here is I've retained my original bearing. I haven't changed the housing. I just point the direction of travel arrow in the direction I want to move, and I rotate my whole body and the compass unit. So the magnetic needle points to the nearest cardinal direction, the cardinal point, which is 90 degrees or east. I then walk out, recce it, find out I've got another aspect of slope, got some steep terrain appearing really quick. And then I can like return to X by doing reverse bearing and heading on a west, okay? And at that point, I can always return to A. So what I'm trying to not do is lose my original bearing. Granted, I could write that bearing down and change the bezel, etc. So that would work as well. It's all about, I've got the ability all the time to return to A. Okay, so having a process. And I think like this is the thing, you know, those folk who have been out and just considered this sort of stuff, you know, if I don't find my objective, what are my options and how would I go about it? How would I apply that? Then those folk, you know, you can see that on assessment. You can see it's been well thought through and people have got a good idea of how to do it. But take it forward, you know, forward further. So again, you know, if you were up there and you're working Welsh 3000s and you were leading the group and it was dark because they were a little bit slower perhaps, then you know they wouldn't want to see those red squiggly lines. That would be you wandering around like a headless chicken. They want to see you doing something that's clear, concise, and you're making informed decisions about the information that you find. Okay, so it's not just about the assessment. I think it's actually really important that when we work, that when people look at us, we do actually like look like we're not a headless chicken. Inside we might be, we might be in panic mode, but outwardly, you know, we look confident at what we're doing. The other common one, Wayne, the other common error made during night nav and how can it be avoided? So the other one would be detail, you know, accuracy. So bearing and distances, you know, building in redundancy to capture mistakes. So you know, before you place your compass onto the map, guessing the bearing first. So, you know, at least you know sort of broadly that you should be heading, like in this situation, between 0 and 90 degrees and not the other way. So when you place your compass on, it would capture any of those silly mistakes you might make. And again, things like measuring distances. We see it a lot where you just measure distances inaccurately. I've done it loads. You know, it's very easy, windy, rainy, tired, knackered, want to go home, still high, and I measure something and I'm like, that doesn't feel right. And then you go back and measure it again, you got it, captured the mistake. So, you know, measuring twice, doing it twice, maybe use a Roman, maybe use mils, you know, both of them, then that would work. Brilliant. So next question, how does night navigation differ technical standard during winter conditions? So I guess this is based around winter ML. Well, it's a bit like that really. You don't see much. So I guess, yeah, I'm not a winter ML provider, so so this is just based on my experience, but poor vis could be limited in winter to like a couple of meters, whereas summer, you can generally see a bit more than that. I mean, clouds dissipate, come and go, so you can get very limited vis, but you know, generally like 10, 20, 30 meters in summer. Sometimes they lift and you see the whole valley and then you get back in. But in winter, you know, you could be like this the whole time and it all merges into the snowpack, so it just becomes like what we refer to as the white room. So the environment is pretty challenging. Unless, just from the Winter ML handbook, I just thought I'd read you this. There is no shortcut to overcoming this. Confidence in such conditions comes from good navigation skills being regularly practiced in poor vis and in a variety of terrain. And I think that just reinforces the point I've been making a little bit about practice. You know, there's no shortcut to overcoming this. The technical standard I would suggest isn't any harder. Rather, just need to be very comfortable in making good decisions efficiently and executing them effectively. And so you can see you won't have necessarily the same level of information that we would perhaps in poor vis and summer conditions. You lose a lot of it and you lose a lot of sensory feel as well. So even that idea of going up and down sometimes is a little bit misplaced. And I guess the other thing would be, the other key thing I would probably put on the table quite quickly is in summer conditions, you know, we've got a little bit of time to maybe make some, have a bit of thinking time to make some more choices. Whereas winter is not a time to be faffing, you know, our processes should be pretty slick. So yeah, good question that. What activities, exercises, drills are most useful in developing night nav? So I've alluded to a little bit of that earlier, but practicing in daylight, just to sort of recap, practicing in daylight, and in good weather, you know, so we've got good vis, and thinking of like easier, non-complex terrain that's perhaps more level, and then thinking about the progression to more complex terrain, and then working into darkness as well. Accuracy at measuring. There's lots of things we could do that. Distance traveled, accuracy, simple and complex terrain. So thinking about those sort of squares and triangles and hexagons would work really well, and having an understanding of some simple, not necessarily search techniques, but techniques that you can sort of like still retain your location on your map, but gain information what's left and right and forward of you, as I was just showing you. What format of compass design would be recommended for night nav? Yeah, there's a lot out there, isn't there? But Type 4 seems to be the standard. You know, it's got a good long base plate. It's got they should have some sort of luminescence on them as well. So yeah, that seems to be the thing. I mean, you've got a selection there. You've got a, yeah, I don't know. I think the Type 4 seems to be the best one. But part of that would be, here they've all got lanyards on. So, you know, having your compass attached to you, I would suggest is really important. You know, certainly when you're working, you never quite know whatever's going to happen. So you need to be able to go hands-free very quickly. So having your compass attached to you, making sure that, that like the carabiner I've got here and the beads and the springs and the beads, none of that will affect your compass. And then if you're having it attached to your jacket or your rucksack, there's nothing in the front of you that will, again, affect your compass. We've seen it quite a few times. And I think the message is getting out at last, but we've seen it quite a few times with mobile phones sort of in this area of the body, and then people using compasses, and then that has on occasions sort of put in an error of 20 to 30 degrees on your compass. Is pretty scary actually to watch. So just be aware of what's around you basically, but have your compass attached. Is really important. And then your pacing beads, I like to think of them as your worry beads, because if you're using those, there's definitely a bit of a worry. Brilliant. So outside of higher qualifications, WinterML, IML, MCI, what other training or qualifications are recommended to maintain and develop night navigation skills? So interestingly, the WinterML, SummerML and the WinterML are the only ones that have a sort of set night nav within the syllabus. I'm pretty certain that's correct in the IML. I'm not sure that there is a sort of set night nav. Both on the IML and the MCI, you could have poor visibility during the day, so you know that would just be a given. But the standard is the same. But in terms of like beyond that, I'm not sure about any other qualifications. I'm aware of like NNAS and British Orienteering Federation, for example, and stuff like that. But I'm not aware of other qualifications. But you know, I think within, you know, we're all here tonight. We're in part of this association, and there's lots of good options offered, whether it's peer or it's led by a matter expert. So there's always good opportunities to sort of confirm, revise new skills through us. This is a good question. Excuse me. What percentage of ML candidates defer on night nav? And Wayne just asked me to base it on my experience. Yeah, I'm not sure of national. In the actual defer percentage nationally, I haven't seen the sort of last year or so, but the actual percentage is really low. I think it's about 10 or 12%. So the system works. You know, the whole process is really effective. It's a, you know, I think it's a really low number, and because of like the standards that Mountain Training have created and put in place. And certainly, I've just had a quick score. I've discounted this year, but going back last year, I couldn't actually see any at all. Not on. I only had a few defers from the previous year, and none of them were related to sort of poor visibility or night nav. So, but I suppose like the thing to bear in mind is that we have like 5 days review on the assessment, and you know, if you've done training with us, then we've obviously seen your performance as well on the training course. But certainly on those 5 days, you know, we may have poor vis the whole week, so we have lots of opportunities to sort of assess it. And we also have on the expedition 2 nights to potentially go out. I mean, I think if we get to night 4 and we're going out again, it's going to be a tiring exercise. It really is. But the process is about supporting you through the award. So it's not about like this is it, this is a set piece, you know, we're asking you to like go into the mountains on day one and adapt your techniques accordingly against the conditions that we have around us. So it might be that we see, you know, a fair bit of distance traveled and compass work before we even get to the expedition. And we are here to sort of observe and coach and support. So we want to like see what you have, we want to like confirm what you're doing is correct, maybe tweak a few things, polish it up a little bit, and give you more opportunities to like use those sort of new ideas. So there's plenty, you know, for me, I think there's plenty of time within those 5 days to have a good look at it. And, you know, I'd always rather spend another hour on a night nav on an ML assessment rather than not get what we're all after. You know, I'd rather spend another hour or so out and just keep polishing it a little bit more. Okay, so if I select one piece of advice required for effective night nav, what would that be? So I've mentioned, I think, a few of those before, and I'm going to wrap this up in a second, some key points. But, you know, accurately measuring things off the map and trusting yourself. It's really interesting sometimes that I've seen a number of occasions now, 2 good examples where we've been doing everything really well, and then the person doesn't trust that compass anymore and literally walks in a different direction because they know it's over there somewhere. They've seen a shadow that sort of like is, you know, some sort of contour, imaginary contour line on the map. So they've just completely lost trust in that compass, or don't want to trust it anymore, and they walk off in a different direction. Really strange situation. So just trust what you're doing. And this all kind of come back to that keyword practice, you know, practice. And I'm just going to end up on this last question, and then I'll wrap it up with some key questions, some key points. Do I believe that all qualified mountain leaders should be tested on nav, including night nav, in order to be considered competent? So I think, I wasn't sure what you were going there with, Wayne. I think, you know, I think there's 2 things. One, to work in the mountains and keep people safe. And yeah, you got to be competent at a range of things, you know, and the night nav is kind of a crucial part of it. Beyond your award, you know, if the question relates to sort of beyond the award, then yeah, absolutely. You know, we need to stay current in the hills, and we need to stay on top of our skill set. And it's our responsibility to sort of maintain that skill and our ability to be able to take people out into the mountains. So I was just going to quickly try to bring it back together for you. I mean, a quick session, and I haven't really even covered everything. You know, there's so much more. It was a really interesting topic to sort of talk about. When Joe sort of asked me about it, I was like, yeah, brilliant. And then as I was sort of putting pen to paper, I realised that within the hour we're really going to be pushed to sort of like get everything down. But hopefully some little bits pointers here, and I guess hopefully you got the idea that practice is the key thing. You know, I think of this whole process as an apprenticeship. So, you know, the mountain leader training process is an apprenticeship. It's about us going out on the hill before training, consolidation, and then presenting at assessment. And then beyond that, you know, our apprenticeship continues and we develop even further, and we become more confident and so on. But it's a continual cycle. But like I say, think of practicing daytime, go into night, go from easy terrain into more complex terrain. Accuracy, bearing and distance traveled, it's really important that you can sort of measure really well off the map, and then you can apply that on the ground as well. The what if scenario. So if you don't find what you're looking for, or you think you found it, but you need to look for something to confirm it, then what have you got in your toolkit to like help you with that? So some form of simple search would be useful. Kit. So yeah, I think the torch is really important. I think I've been in numerous situations where having a lot of illumination has really made my life a lot easy. So, you know, reliance on other people having torches is important. We need them to have torches, but, you know, I don't have control over them recharging their batteries, or, you know, those spare batteries they've got, are they actually spare, or those your old dud ones that you've forgotten to take out? So, you know, these are the little things that like have slipped up over the years. And so having, you know, some decent kit is really important. And I think also in the process of the above, the practicing the accuracy and the what if scenarios and sort of wandering around on simple searches, you know, some sort of GPS mapping software on your phone, for example, will really help give you the confidence and build your confidence in those areas. Get your pacing card made up. Yeah, don't be doing maths in the middle of the night or under pressure. It's not really a good idea. And put whatever you want on it. You know, it may, like I say, you can have 2 or 3 if you want. I don't mind. You know, I think that'd be brilliant to have. You know, I mean, if you have got all the information that you want on those cards, and you utilize them, and that's through your experience. You think, yeah, I've made a mistake here, and I think that'd be really useful to have, and get it all down. Have a system. So, you know, create a process, you know, so you get given a lab, you know, you get given, or you're working and you know, you got to navigate the next leg in Poor Viz, then, you know, how the strategy, and you know, you've got your magnifying glass, your different maps, your pacing card, where is it on you? And is it at hand? And is it attached to you? Or is it in the rucksack still? Do you need to annotate your maps? How do you use torches? You know, if you think about a head torch, hand torch, compass, pacing card, you've only got one set of hands, you know, there's a lot going on. So have you got a system that will work? And then obviously beyond all that, you've still got to manage people as well, haven't you? I think, to be honest, I think Poor Viz during the day is quite hard. I think night nav is relatively straightforward. It's easier than day nav in many respects. I think during the day, and I might even put that sort of Poor Viz daytime nav as well. You know, there's a lot of information available to you. You can see further. You can see a lot of 360 around you. You can see a lot of contours. You can see a lot of other features as well. Whereas at night, you can only see your torch beam length. That's all you have. You just have 25 meters or 30 meters in your torch beam length. And it's very much based on distance traveled and your direction, so compass bearings. So kind of coming back to those sort of keywords all the time. Brilliant. I hope, I'm just going to bring my little need to bring my little box across to answer some questions. It's just hidden a little bit. There we go. Brilliant. Hope that was useful. I think Joe's going to. I think she said it was recording it and was going to put it online afterwards at some point. So just quickly going through the comments. Black Diamond Spot is a great head torch. Thanks, Austin. Yeah, glassware here. Wet conditions. Agree with baseball cap and good hood. Okay, one from Mark. I bought some Vapro orienteering glasses that are half moon shape, so I'm able to easily see over the top of them. Interesting. I've tended to take a magnifying glass with little LEDs. Thanks, Andy. Emma's very excited about mechanical chronograph. So the advancements in head torches of ML assessment got harder to compensate for the much brighter head torches. Yeah, it's a good question, John. Yeah, sometimes it's really funny. It's like there's times where some people have put out these super duper torches and the whole mountain is just like poof, lit up, and I'm like, oh god, this is not really Poor Viz. How do I get around that? And you know, but then on the flip side, I am the first person to go get the best torch and best illumination that you can afford. You know, it makes sense when you work. And so that's our challenge. You know, it's our challenge then to like not to make the standard isn't higher or harder. It's our challenge then to like get this what we're after for that evening with like the moon sort of like lighting up the whole mountain. Yeah, it is a challenge for us sometimes, but personally I think brilliant, get those sort of torches and in your bag, because when you take a group out, that is what you need to have. Yeah, so Edith, hadn't said she was my head torch was borderline, i.e. too good. That was years ago. Yeah, I think we had a there was a Cree produced this LED sort of bulb a few years ago, and that started flooding the market a number of years. And yeah, it was challenging for a while. Everyone was like, well, that doesn't seem very fair. But actually, I think we quickly cottoned on to the idea that we all wanted one of those torches, because yeah, there's some really good kit out there now. Yeah, somebody remembering using Zoom torches back in the 70s. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Blah blah blah. Is there any truth that when people get disorientated that they go around in circles? Yeah, maybe. I think yeah, I mean, you can definitely lose all sense of direction without a doubt. It's a really interesting exercise sometimes if you're out with some friends and you just turn your torches off and like have a chat for 5 minutes and then all point in the put your torches back on and point the direction where you think your car is. Honestly, I bet you'll get it wrong. So you lose sense of direction really, really quickly. So, and there's certainly stories around here. I think most people have, in North Wales, there's quite a few good stories of folk who are working, instructing, being lost on the Glera Eye, just wandering around in a circle because I like, oh, I know the way, don't just follow me. So yeah, I think it's dead easy to do that. Brilliant. That's it. I think we're there. So if you've got any further questions, you can drop me a line, obviously, as always. Hopefully this has made some sense. If there's anything on reflection, then again, feel free to drop me a personal line. That's fine. And like I say, Joe will put this online at some point. And on that note, if anyone's got any other great subjects, I mean, I've got another one on this Friday, which is navigation, very more general. But if anyone's got any other good sort of mountain leader type subjects that you'd be interested in me to get my teeth into, I've got a few weeks spare, so happy to sort of have another chat with you. Anyway, brilliant. Thanks very much.